everyone. So good to be back in person for GitHub Universe, and a huge hello to all of you watching from home, whether you're watching from your office, you're about to prepare dinner, or you're joining us as you're having breakfast. It is so great to have you with us. How about that video? Wasn't it great? It's the first time anyone in the world has seen that video about GitHub, and you're about to see a lot more of it around the United States and soon the world, as we continue to tell the GitHub story, which is, in part, your story. I'm really excited to be closing out day one. It's been a packed day full of talks, and I encourage everyone to stick around tomorrow. There are great talks from Mike Hanley, our SVP of engineering, about how we build software. Talks from maintainers about how they're sharing their work with the world, and of course, our opening keynote tomorrow with Stormy Peters, our VP of Communities. You do not want to miss her talk and the stories from her team about how all of you are powering the world with software. Throughout Universe, throughout the day so far, you've been hearing a lot about how we got here, how software has changed the world, how our ships are in your hands, and how you're making them your own. But for a moment, I want to rewind the clock a bit, about a decade back, and talk about a much younger GitHub, back when there were just small ideas, tiny ideas that were being built with love and passion and turned into something absolutely incredible. And my story starts with an Octocat. I joined GitHub about 10 years ago. And when I joined, we had a relatively small paid product that had some early success, something called GitHub FI, which ultimately became GitHub Enterprise Server. It was small, but a growing business. The pull request was created, and we also built a lot of things that never saw the light of day. But most importantly, millions of developers were already flocking to GitHub, building and sharing their code with each other. The open source community rallied around GitHub. And all along the way, we had an Octocat that was growing with us. The Octocat became a part of the GitHub zeitgeist because of a simple, tiny idea. The founders wanted a fun error page, something to make you smile when we all screwed up. But with Git having the concept of an octopus merge, a nerdy idea mingled with a fun one, and the Octocat was born. We purchased the image from an illustrator named Simon Oxley, the same illustrator who created logos for DigitalOcean, Bitly, and the huge startups of the day. But what started as a fun, nerdy, put a smile on your face idea quickly turned into something so much more. The designers at GitHub created dozens of Octocats. They became a way to describe your identity, whether you're a Parentacat, a Yogitacat, or one of my personal favorites, the Maxtocat. Hubbers, developers, customers, people dressed in suits were clamoring for stickers from a bunch of us wearing hoodies, and so we kept tinkering. Like, we really went deep on this. How does an Octocat walk? I mean, really, how many tentacles does the Octocat have, and why is it obviously not 8? And what we were really asking was, how do we entertain people while we're teaching them about Git, or version control, or the latest enterprise release? Over the years, we've produced more than a dozen full-length animations, a physical Octocat figurine, a plushie that my kids love, and much more. The Octocat got a name, Mona, a full backstory, a world, and a community all her own. So why the hell does a software company invest this much into a brand? As Cameron and early Hubbard said, it's not something that you do logically or analytically. It doesn't seem like it would even be a successful brand element, but we did it anyway. And it was an enormous success because people view the Octocat as an extension of our community of developers. And because whether it's software or Octocats, at GitHub, we're never quite done. At Universe this year, we have an absolutely beautiful new book celebrating 10 years of tinkering, crafting, and perfecting our Octocat by our design teams, our animation teams, illustration teams, and our community. So if you're here on site with us, it's definitely worth a look in the shop. The pages are absolutely beautiful. The Octocat, the animations, the community are still evolving and growing every day because of all of you. So the reason I wanted to tell you this story, the journey that it brought us on, the journey that it brought me on, is because at GitHub, we're builders too. We're building for builders. And we all need somewhere to start. We start with an idea, we tinker with it, we go deep, and we see what happens. That was the GitHub I joined 10 years ago, and it's still the GitHub of today. And so, right now, I want to do something we haven't done in a while. I want to show you the things that are on our workbench, that are in our labs, the ideas that are just experiments. I'm talking about things that may never make it all the way to the product or be next year's big announcement at Universe, but those ideas that are just small ideas, and maybe they'll become our next big release. Arthur Ashe, a famous American tennis player, said, "Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can." And we can do a whole hell of a lot. And so here we go. Let me show you what we're experimenting on. I'm going to be doing this live because who doesn't love a live demo, particularly when they go bad? I mean, hell, especially when they go bad, I guess. And so I hope you'll stick with me as we work through this. GitHub Universe. Great. OK, so the theme at this year's GitHub Universe and our new tagline is let's build from here. So what if we took that literally? What if you could build GitHub in GitHub? If your repository was more than just a static README and a link to documentation or your website, or to some other tool that you have to use to give it a try. And that's why the team has built Blocks, a way to engage with your repos directly and interactively. So let me show you. So here I have a little example project. Of course, like every good project, it needs a README. So let me go ahead and add that now. The home of the Octocats. OK, but I don't just want to type a bunch of words, right? I want to make it easier for people to understand what's going on in my repo. I can do that by directly embedding a block that shows off what it does. You'll see it's using my demo.js file. I can click this button and immediately start seeing what my script does. Look at all those Octocats, right? That was me earlier. We should also list out the possible images that we can get back. So I'll add another header. Come down here. Images. And now, in this block, we can see all the possible options that would be returned by the script. But Blocks is way more than just a README editor. So let me get out of full screen mode. And I can quickly click Save and immediately commit this to my repository. Blocks reimagines repos, and it puts your repository's core front and center. So we have a file tree on the left and history on the right. Blocks are components that customize how you interact with your content. It could be as simple as a file viewer or as powerful as a live code sandbox or a WYSIWYG editor. Under the hood, a block is a JavaScript component that knows how to interact with the files and folders inside your repo. So you can think of them like little apps that you deploy simply by pushing to GitHub. But what should the README of the future look like? Well, maybe it looks a little bit like this. Here's an example of the P5.js project. Now, instead of using an SVG hack or adding everything manually, we can have a proper project health block along the top for people to get a sense of the popularity of the project. You can scroll down and use an interactive demo. This isn't a screenshot. I can go right here into the code and immediately start changing it. We can even have reference documentation with search. So as you know, I want to draw a circle with this library. I can type in circle, click it, scroll down, and immediately edit. Now here, further down, I can highlight the contributors of the project. Oop, there we go. Let's see if we can find someone. Hey, thanks, Kate. Now, we see projects split their time and their energies by building really great project websites to make their projects approachable and more powerful. But with Blocks, projects can have a powerful UX that isn't possible with simple Markdown and with no need for a separate project website. And it's not just READMEs. You can read and write any content inside your repository. So let's take a look at an example of a diagram. I opened up this Excalibur diagram. I can view it, and I can immediately say, hello, universe, and save it to my repository. Or if I'm keeping some sort of data set in my repo, instead of viewing it as a text file, I can have a spreadsheet interface We didn't really have much rain today, which was amazing. Or I can view this information as a chart by looking at a chart block. Now, even if it is code in some form, sometimes it's not always best to read it as simple text. So I can load up this style sheet, or corporate style sheet over here. I don't want to see the raw code, I want to see the actual style guide. And I can even click through history so that I can see what has changed over time. Actually, I want to put this style guide at the bottom of my ReadMe. So I'll put it here. Okay, great. Blocks aren't only for files. You can use them on entire folders or even entire repos. So say you're running a community. You can build out your own dashboard like this one, which shows the health of your community within your repository. And even internally, we've been finding blocks to be a great way to prototype the future of GitHub. We've prototyped a block here that uses GitHub Copilot to summarize the explanation of the code for each function. We can create blocks, deploy them, learn from them, and keep iterating. And that is GitHub Blocks. So Blocks is available as an experiment for you to sign up and give a try, both the blocks we've created, but also the blocks that you want to create on your own. So head on over to blocks.githubnext.com to sign up for the waitlist and share your ideas of what an interactive repository experience should be. So in that Blocks demo, I quickly showed you a way that we're experimenting with integrating the power of GitHub Copilot and AI into the core of the GitHub experience. But when I'm writing code, I'm not just in github.com or in my editor all day. I'm also using my terminal. So what if GitHub Copilot could also be just as helpful in your CLI? Let me show you an example. So say you've forgotten the exact incantation of listing all the TypeScript files in your project. Let's ask GitHub Copilot and see if it can help. We invoke it by just typing ? and asking what we want. Okay, that looks right, but I can then ask Copilot to refine it even further. I know the last time I did this, it returned a bunch of junk from node modules, so I'll say exclude node modules. Okay, you can pass -v to grep. I didn't know that. Finally, let's sort the list so we can make the list easier to read. Sort by size. Okay, that looks right. Let's run it. There you go. All the code sorted with a good overview of where your source code is concentrated. But another place that I sometimes can forget flags and options is with Git. It can be incredibly powerful to manipulate, say, Git log data, but it can also be hard to remember all the subcommands and flags. We've built a special command into GitHub Copilot CLI that helps you with Git commands, so let's start with a simple one. Let's see if it can help with deleting a branch. Okay, I mean, that one was easy. So now let's say we want to do some Git sleuthing through commits. I want to pull up a list of the commits that are security related, but I can't for the life of me remember how to do this. So let me ask Copilot commits with the word security. Okay, today I learned you can pass the grep flag to git log. Now all I got to do is run it, and there we go. GitHub also has a flexible CLI experience that we call GH, but every now and then, stringing together advanced commands can be difficult. So we built another special command to help just with that. So let me get all the open issues on the Tailwind CSS repository. Tailwind CSS. Okay, I can pass it the state flag to issue lists, that makes sense. But what if I wanted a consolidated list of users who have opened issues on the Tailwind CSS repo? Have opened issues on Tailwind Labs, Tailwind CSS. Okay, it passes the JSON flag, so I'm only filtering down the response to a particular field. And of course, it's using JQ to make sure I'm only getting each user once. Let's run it, and there we go. Shout out to Mike McQuaid, I gotta update Brew. With GitHub Copilot in your CLI, you can start to see how similar to using it in your IDE it is. You can both more easily get your task done, but when you forget about grep and git log, but you also get the benefit of learning how to craft complete end-to-end commands in your shell, Git, or GH command line tool. I'm so excited about the potential for GitHub Copilot CLI to save me time and teach me a few things along the way. Okay, so now we've shown you AI in your command line. I want to head back to the editor for a minute. If you've used an image editing tool like Photoshop, you've probably been familiar with brushes, right? To use a brush, you paint on an image and it applies some sort of effect wherever you've painted. Now, we wondered, what if you could use brushes, but not just on your code? Not just on images, but on your code. Now, let me show you the next experiment that we're very creatively calling brushes. So here we have a JavaScript file. It's got a bunch of functions in it, as you can see. I want to take a look at this first function. So it's a little bit hard to read. It's super terse, and while I know being clever is fun, I'd rather just understand what all the operators are doing here. So I'm going to click into the function. And it opens up a toolbox of brushes. This first brush is going to rewrite the code and make it more readable. There we go. This code's much easier to read. Instead of multiple ternary statements all in one line, we have them split into their own statements and conditions. Now, what else can we do here? Well, since it's a TypeScript file, we can also have it add some types. Okay, it's guessing the two input parameters are going to be numbers. It's going to output a number. All right, let's go on to the next function here. So I know there's a bug in this one from when I ran it earlier today, but I'm not totally sure what's going on. So there's a job with our third brush here, which will make a look for bugs and try to fix them. So let's do that. Okay. Oh, okay. It looks like I misspelled low. Great. And now, this is not going to work for all bugs, to be obvious, right? But we can use this next brush to make this function easier to debug all up. Okay, it looks like it's added a log statement, so our program will print out the value of each variable every time we run this code. It's much faster than if I were to type this all out myself when I'm doing some console log debugging. And after we're done, we'll want to clean up this code. I'd normally do that by hand, but why not just have a brush do that for us? Okay, great. This third function's also a little bit hard to follow. So we have this brush, which is going to go ahead, break it up into steps so it's easier for me and whoever comes next. As you can see, it's broken this into steps, told us what each of those steps done. I find this very valuable to use when I'm looking at new code bases or code in languages that I'm not particularly familiar with. But all of these brushes don't just work in JavaScript. They'll help you out anywhere you're writing code. So let's take a look at this HTML file with a little bit of CSS. We have this CSS snippet that's going to round the corners of our form. And I know that I have to do something to make it work in all browsers, but I can never remember what that is either. So I can use this brush to make my code more robust. There we go. It's went in and added the vendor prefixes, and it looks good to me. We know this won't cover every use case that you'll run into. So we've also made an ability to add custom brushes on the fly. This form right here isn't very accessible as it's currently written. We want to make it easier for screen readers for sure. So let's create a new brush that makes this form more accessible. And there we go. It's added IDs, and it's linked to labels to the input tags. So those are a few of the brushes that we're putting into the toolbox for this experiment. Our Copilot Labs VS Code extension has a bunch of really great experiments with GitHub Copilot. You can explain code, you can translate code between languages, and more. And we just added this brushes experiment today. So go download the Copilot Labs extension on the VS Code extension marketplace to give it a try. So I've shown you 3 new uses of AI within your developer workflow: in your repository, in your terminal, and in your IDE via new, novel uses of GitHub Copilot. But Copilot's magic is that it continuously assists developers with non-intrusive, helpful suggestions. You can look, you can learn, or you can ignore it all and carry on typing. Yet coding clearly goes beyond editing. It's also about collaboration. And GitHub's pull requests are at the center of that collaboration. So how can we bring the power of AI to software collaboration? Our aim is to provide AI assistance to developers at every stage, from beginners learning to fix their first issue to experts carefully reviewing large PRs. We're calling this experiment AI for pull requests. One of our prototypes is an easy-to-use GitHub app we call PRBot. But we think there are a ton of interaction models here. We've had a great partnership with OpenAI. Models just keep getting better and better, so we're really excited about the possibilities. So let me show you some early samples of PRBot in action. Here's a cut-down version of the TensorFlow 2.0 tutorials, and someone has filed an issue. Here, this issue wants to, oops, sorry, wrong one. This one wants to replace TensorFlow with PyTorch. So a task like this can sometimes be daunting whether you're new or an existing contributor. So let's show you how PRBot could go about making a change like this. We'll give it a quick second to read the changes, and there we go. Here's a quick explanation about how I should move forward to make a change like it suggested. Now, why not also have it suggest the changes given the explanation looked good? Now, for this, the bot will react with an emoji to let us know that it's thinking, and then it's going to start walking through the various files in my repository and start suggesting a change. So I can start to click into the changes. Okay, this one makes sense. Take a look at another one down here as it's still working. You'll notice it's not just changing the libraries, but also changing the function calls where necessary. Okay, it skipped the ReadMe. And then PRBot will also put together a pull request for us that we can go and review. So let's take a look at that. Perfect. Now, let's say instead someone sent you a pull request. Well, the first thing in this PR is that it doesn't have a very good description. So let's ask PRBot to describe the changes that it sees in our PR. We'll give it a second again. It sends an emoji to know that it's working. It's starting to describe the changes in the various files. And here we go. This pull request makes the following changes. Now, I can get a broad overview of what this PR is doing before I go and attempt to review the PR myself. Now, why not just ask PRBot if I should merge this pull request? Because you can't do it without a code review. So we'll give PRBot a quick second. We'll scroll back up to do the work, and boom, there it is. Here's a suggested change with all the context of the PR. So if you're going to offer a review similar to what you'd expect, from your colleagues, here it is. I have the changes to fix. That one also looks good. I'm going to commit the changes. And we're good to go. So even if we want to have a human team member review this before we finally merge, utilizing Copilot gives immediate feedback at any time of day that goes way beyond linters. We're still very hard at work on even more use cases on having AI within issues and pull request workflows to make the lives of developers easier. This set of experiments isn't quite ready for you to play with, but we've got well over a dozen more in the works, and we're so excited to show you those sometime early next year. So blocks, Copilot CLI, brushes, AI for PRs, and a dozen other experiments and tinkering projects that I didn't show you. At GitHub, we're trying to find new ways every day to put developers first. And it's not just a tagline, it's not an empty promise. We're developers too. We also want to stay in the flow. We're not interested in tools that just get the job done. We're chasing happiness and the joy of building just like you. Some of these experiments start small, and they stay small. But some of them start small, look like they won't work. We go back to the drawing board. The idea grows a little, evolves a little more, and then it takes on a shape and becomes something that changes the face of software. Everything I've shown you in this session is built by our GitHub Next team and fueled by the feedback of thousands of Hubbers and all of you. GitHub Next is the team that worries about exploring the unknown, pushing what software development should be like, and of course, experimenting. A lot of their ideas will never see the light of day, but we learn, we tinker, and we iterate again. So If you want to learn more about what this immensely talented team of researchers and engineers are up to, check out their work at githubnext.com. You can sign up for the Blocks experiment, take a look at learnings from efforts like flat data or workspaces, and give us your feedback. githubnext.com/survey. Your ideas fuel our ideas. For those of you in person, you can find members of the GitHub Next team in the demo stations and throughout the event. So let's take it all the way back to the beginning, back to the Octocat. Started with a fun idea, a way to put a smile on the face of a developer, when something was broken. And the experiments I showed you today, they're like early Octocats. We're still sketching them out, but you're developers, you get it. This is part of the enormous magic of software, sketching it out, getting feedback, iterating quickly, getting it into people's hands, and seeing what happens next. Sometimes it can feel like software is like sketching on a page, drawing something, erasing some of it, drawing it again, because in a way it's just like that. Bits mean nothing until someone starts using them. And I'm so excited to get some of these bits into your hands today and someday in the future. Come back tomorrow morning for the kickoff of day 2 with Stormy Peters at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. back home for me in Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. GMT, and for the last thing before you go to bed at 11 p.m. Indian Standard Time. I want to offer a huge thank you so much for our sponsors for being a great part of this experience today and tomorrow. Thank you to the production team who's been doing amazing work with us the past 3 days. And thanks to all of you for being here with us on day 1 of GitHub Universe 2022. We'll see you all tomorrow.